Hi guys, sorry to start a few minutes late, but obviously I haven't got a clicker, so I'm going to stand over here rather than stand in front of you. But yeah, so hopefully you're in the right session. I know David's running a session, so we've actually got quite a good turnout considering. But yeah, so if you're in the right session, so the network forensics, the importance for network visibility for security operations. So before I go into the actual topic and start talking to you about sort of the actual topic, I thought I would obviously introduce myself and what I do. Obviously, so you can choose whether you listen to what I'm saying over the next hour, and that isn't actually me on the screen. It was just a nice Google image I found. But yeah, I'm a pre-sales consultant for RSA, so I cover their cybersecurity portfolio and their security operations centre, software and hardware solutions. So that can encompass quite a few technologies, but in summary really, so security analytics, so the full packet capture, the SIM aspect, malware analytics, memory forensics, sort of instant response products as well. So although I'm from RSA, I'm probably going to keep off topic from RSA hacks. I'm probably not going to talk about sort of NSA, backdoors or anything of that nature, but I guess if you want to talk about that, I've got some, as soon as I have a few beers I can be a bit more creative and tell you some stories and things like that. So yeah, I did mention I was pre-sales, so I do spend a lot of my time just running up and down the country with whiteboard markers, drawing things up on boards and spending a lot of time doing that. Although, as well as being sort of pre-sales, a lot of the sort of activities that I do is, well, the actual pre-sales activity is more sort of technical validation. So going to customers, explain about the product, show them exactly what it does, demo if required, deploy it on site. Quite a advanced topic, so often I have to do a lot of sort of instant response and network forensics while on site, and actually find something generally compelling usually to get to the end order in sometimes. So the pre-sales role, yeah, not just sales, but everything from sort of technical account management through to support roles, through to buying the beers and the dinner and lunch and all of that nature. So what am I doing here? I didn't actually know we were going to give away Henderson's relish, but actually, seeing as I'm here, it's quite good. I managed to get a couple of extra bottles. But yeah, I bought a couple a few years back when I was up here doing some work at Shepherd Hallam actually, and I can't remember when it was. I don't know if it was my wife's birthday or anniversary, but I thought I'd splash out and buy her a bottle. But, so that's one reason I'm here. But obviously the other reason, I got a call from David asking. I've done a few presentations here before, coming as RSA. But I thought to come in and just give something not necessarily RSA focused or product focused, really just from what I've seen. I've been in probably 50 to 100 different SOC environments, seeing how people do it really well, seeing how people do things really badly. So just give you some of my experience of what I've seen on site. So again, this is just the topic of the title. I think it's in the book anyway, so most of you know why you're here. Okay, so I'm just going to start with a few different logos you may notice on the board here. So I'll just wait for it just to load up. I'm glad I didn't do this on mouse click. But really, just wanted to show you, this is from Hack Armageddon, which gives you a list basically of sort of companies this year that have experienced a cyber attack. So some big names there, but really just wanted to set the scene that these are large organisations with big security teams, global SOC environments, and they're still getting breached. So obviously some great big names there, including EC Council, which happened to happen when I was doing one of their training courses, so we should have gone for a different course. So the next box I'm going to show here is really what I see as a big blank box, but what I like to call sort of the threat landscape. So not just what we know, but sort of known and unknown threats. And this is what I see, this is the big window of opportunity, the big threat landscape. And if we start sort of populating that with the way people look at security at the moment, the right keyboard, we can see we've got security controls that people are implementing in place, which gives a certain amount of coverage. So for example, antivirus, it gives us a certain amount of coverage, but doesn't obviously protect us against the whole threat landscape. As we start populating these with other technologies, we can see that we're getting good coverage here, great use of preventative controls, but actually there's still quite a lot of white space. And if we go back to the last slide, where we saw obviously a lot of organisations that are getting breached, we can see that they are employing these sort of traditional defences. And not actually being able to recognise when they are breached and actually remediate based on them. This is also reflected with the next slide, where one of our sort of RSA sales slides that's taken from the RSA conference, where it's actually reflected that people are accepting that there's not sort of 100% confidence in being able to stop cyber attacks, yet there is still this big budget spend on prevention, whereas monitoring and response are still very, very small. So we understand that we are going to get breached, we understand people are going to get into our networks, but still they're spending the budget on prevention rather than actually being able to get visibility once the inevitable happens. This is again reflected by an APT1 statement I've got here from the management report. I have got slightly different figures here from one of the presentations earlier with the average of 365 days, so I did double check the report and make sure I screenshotted it from the actual report. But really it just goes to show that we're talking, if anyone knows the report there, we're talking about large organisations there which obviously have been targeted. We can see that they have got controls in place, they've been able to work around them, and but they haven't been able to detect them. So we can say, yeah, 356 days being the average for detection. Okay, so I guess why do we need visibility? If the last statement wasn't enough, what do we get from visibility? I guess network anomalies. So things we may want to look at when we get into a network. So hunting for suspicious activity. So it's great security controls can match on a signature, but if we don't know necessarily what we're looking at, it's very hard to detect that. So even things like, I might want to see all traffic going to Russia, or the action is a post and there's no referrer, or there's no user agent in that traffic. There's no way of seeing this unless you've got a signature matching for it, but there's no way of actually hunting for it unless you have a capability to view all the traffic and spot these anomalies. The effectiveness as well of security controls. I've been in quite a few environments where I've deployed something behind their existing security controls, whether it be their sort of firewalls or all their security defences in place, and actually they're telling me, look, users cannot access anything like Facebook. We don't allow this sort of traffic through the network, it's blocked at this layer. Really just putting something behind and monitoring that just really shows how effective your controls are. And in most scenarios, there's always some really interesting things to be found, whether that just be sort of user acceptance stuff that shouldn't be happening, whether it be sort of bit-time downloads or something that are being allowed through into the network, or whether it's something a bit more malicious than that. A typical one we'd find is sort of plain text passwords and things like that, which people will use for enumeration once they breach into your network. But yeah, the actual people looking after the network don't see these plain text passwords on the wire. And the last one, answer any questions. So in the event of a breach or the inevitable happening, being able to answer some of these questions. And they seem very simple questions, but often they're quite hard to answer. Just things like, when did the intrusion begin? Is it still going on? What did they take? And obviously if you haven't got anything there, you don't actually have anything to be able to provide you with these answers. So this is a picture I was trying to work into the presentation, but actually started some sort of debate with me and a colleague in the office the other day of whether that was a sitting duck or not. But we couldn't actually find a better image, and we still haven't figured out whether it's sitting or not. But again, as someone pointed out, it's it's hard to see because you haven't got that level of visibility. We can't see its legs, we don't know what's going on. So with visibility, there's obviously a few different tools out there that will give us this sort of level of visibility. The one that was mentioned earlier was sort of NetFlow. So really just having a look at what sort of traffic is we're seeing on the network. So NetFlow, developed by Cisco, and really originally used for sort of network troubleshooting or performance management, but obviously offers some sort of security value as well. We can actually see timings and data that's been sent on the wire, but it doesn't allow us to answer all the questions still. The second one there, full packet capture, is really allowing us to see absolutely everything that's going on the wire. So we're talking about sort of sitting in line, whether that be a tap or a spam port, and sending to a full packet capture device and actually capturing absolutely everything that's on the wire. Obviously there's quite a few challenges with capturing our data. There's quite a bit of data that's there, in addition to the storage requirements. So if we're thinking about sort of network throughput, so we're actually capturing everything on the wire, if you're looking at maybe a 100 meg network, you're looking at sort of terabyte data storage every single day. So we're looking at massive data sets, and obviously in line with that sort of gig throughput, you'll be looking at sort of 10 terabytes a day. And some of the networks that sort of I deal with, sort of 60 gigabits per second networks, you're looking at sort of 600 terabytes of data you're capturing every single day. And if you want a month's worth of retention on that, you're looking at sort of petabytes worth of data, so massive data sets. So I guess there's a challenge in itself to actually capture the data, but then also actually be able to make sense of that. So if you can imagine looking at maybe a terabytes worth of data using a packet analysis tool like Wireshark or something of that nature, probably be quite hard to find what you're looking for, especially if you don't know exactly what it looks like. So just to show you an example of this, we've just shown a Wireshark example here. So we've got a Wireshark session here, 6,000 packets. So it's a tool I use very often. Obviously, all security operations people should be able to use Wireshark as a minimum. I even started using it the other week for troubleshooting when customers telling me we're dropping packets and having to prove it was on their Palo Alto. But great tool. But obviously, looking at 6,000 packets just in this one session, whereas if we actually look at it from sort of a session view, so actually looking at sessions rather than packets, we're actually looking at sort of 31 sessions here. So obviously a lot easier to use. In this example we can see here, we've actually got the full packet capture and extracted interesting attributes out of the traffic. So interesting header information, so we can actually see, starting at the top there, we can see the different services and how we pass them. We can see the host names, we can see IP addresses, port numbers, and anything interesting. And the benefit of obviously this is we can scale for massive deployments, massive architectures and data sets, and we can drill down to what we're interested in. So if we are looking for example, just a single IP address, we can pivot the whole data set just by clicking on a single IP address. In addition to that, we can do, because we're looking at the sessions, we can do reconstruction as well. So here's an example of an email to Trusty Clown, it appears to be, with an email, and rather than actually looking at that in the traditional way and looking at the packets, we can just reconstruct that. Obviously we can see who it's to, who it's from, if there's any attachments. Because we've got that full packet capture, we can actually see everything that's transmitted on the wire, and we can extract that if required. In this case, there's a Facebook link there, and actually the tool we're using here just to reconstruct that, actually when you try to click on it, it shows it doesn't actually match the Facebook login there, it's actually going straight to an IP address. So it's going to go through to an example of something I've seen on site. I was going through it the other day after not looking at it for about a year and a half, and I noticed this report pretty much summarised exactly what I saw on site at the time when I was doing some forensic investigation. In this case it was for an evaluation for an organisation who I found enough stuff to make it compelling enough that they saw they had some loss and purchased a solution. So I didn't need to go too deep into it, but yeah, after just putting the slides together the other day, I found this white paper which sort of details a lot of what I found, and yeah, I wish I had it a couple of years ago. It would have made things a lot easier. But this is it's just cut at the bottom of the screen here, but this is a report that's been generated by Detica, and it's quite a comprehensive white paper. And the other good thing about this as well, it just happens to be a coincidence, but it's actually been in the news lately. I can see here it's July the 10th this post is, and this is on their Get Safe Online, and it was also spotted on the National Crime Agency as well, that they're going to sort of target this as well, and they've got bringing together people like the FBI and GCHQ and some of the German federal police and that, just to combat this, because it is a big problem that they're seeing. My example was from a while back, but it's pretty much exactly the same. But I'm just going to go through it, but just framing exactly what we're looking at. So this is an organisation that I kind of worked with, and probably around about the general size of companies I work with, or maybe on the slightly bigger end. But again, large organisation. They've already got best of breed technologies in their network. They've got their defence in depth. They've got their sort of best vendors they can get. Tools deployed in there. They've got SOC teams. They've got all their perimeter defences and security tools reporting into a SIM that they manage. And they've got sort of a moderate throughput. This is just a single choke point in the network we're monitoring here. We see just 5 days of packet capture, still using 32 terabytes worth of data. So this is just this is the organisation I walked into. I have redacted quite a lot of this for you, but really just to give you some idea of how I went through the investigation, and I'm just going to show you a couple of screenshots here. So the top one we've got here, really just top level domain. So straight away, without having to go really low level on the packet level, I can get an overview of all the traffic over a really small time period. It happened to be overnight. And actually see some top level domains here, and for the user's activity, there's a few that stood out there for me, definitely the SU and the CC. So actually really just pivoting the data set around that, we can actually say, great, will show me a bit more information around that. So literally drilling down to this metadata. So here we can see a couple of different services, nothing overly compelling. We can see we've passed one as DNS and one as HTTP. The other one hasn't been recognised by our protocol passers, so it's just been marked there as other. Because we've got the full packet capture as well, we can actually see everything that's going across the wire. So in this case, they were using a proxy architecture, and they were doing NTLM authentication to their blue coats. For some reason, obviously, best practice would be to use a ticketing system like sort of Kerberos or something, but they were using NTLM. So because of that, we're able to extract that information and straight away get accountability for the person or the user account that was doing this activity, but also the AD workstation as well. So looking at the external communications, straight away there seems to be some very interesting traffic. So we've got about 5 different domains here, all prefixed by this sort of what appears to be randomly generated string. And these are the different domains, and obviously all CC and SU top level domains, because that's what we were drilled into at the time. There's an extract there from the Detica white paper at the top there, which sort of details exactly what we would expect to see, and or an example of it, which is exactly what we were seeing in this network as well. So we can see that they're looking at this randomly generated string at the beginning, followed by wguards.cc. So that's exactly what we were seeing. It gives us a bit more information about exactly how it was doing, and a bit more of sort of a deeper level than I actually went into. Session reconstruction as well. So obviously the last slide was just looking at the data that's extracted out of the session, but we can reconstruct the whole session as well. In this case, it's not the best example because it was they weren't doing any sort of SSL decryption, didn't have any sort of man-in-the-middle appliances. So all we saw was this connection through to the proxy, so HTTP connect. We can see the host they were trying to connect to, and that's pretty much all we could see. This isn't obviously great because we've got no accountability of what's been lost in the network. Obviously, if we could have decryptors in place, we could have done that. But obviously, it is just an example that we are using encryption in this case. This wasn't the end of the story for this scenario though, because obviously they are doing other traffic as well as going out via the proxy. We're actually seeing a lot of internal communications. So really just looking at what else is this user up to, what have they been doing. So again, just filtering just by this host itself. We can see, again, lots of different traffic, again, lots of other traffic which we wouldn't expect to see. We can also see some SMB and some RPC traffic. So doing a bit of research actually, and yeah, looking at the SMB negotiation string for the SMB traffic, it was a little bit more than what we'd expect there, and actually just doing a Google search highlighted some sort of vulnerabilities that people could exploit. So straight away, looking into this, we can see that there is some RPC vulnerabilities, and we can see some RPC traffic. So straight away, looking into that, we can see the RPC was to some destination IP addresses, which happen to be servers inside our environment, and speaking to the client, they shouldn't actually have access, or the user account shouldn't have access to everything on these machines. What we can see is what we expect is some random buffer overflow, what appears to be RPC overflow, just random text as we saw earlier in the exploit, and we can see that traffic many times over to these destination servers. So in this case, the actual I went to take a screenshot of it, but I was having a problem blurring it out really. But what we saw was lots of users inside the organisation have document folders and also and their desktop was being backed up to file servers and Active Directory servers inside their environment. And what had happened is this endpoint machine had got compromised. They had then obviously done this buffer overflow against it, compromised it, and then transferred all the data over SMB back to the machine. And then obviously we've got this encrypted link outbound, which we can't see, but we can assume in this instance that they exfiltrated quite a bit of data to these compromised hosts. So as far as it goes in terms of sort of a guide through sort of a use case of having sort of this visibility. One book, I didn't necessarily have a sort of forensics background, and one book I read particularly useful was sort of network forensics. If anyone wants to do any reading or anything on really high level of sort of network forensics and the requirement for it, to go through everything from NetFlow, etc., I really recommend this book, and I get all of my core SEs who cover my products, I get them to read this book and actually make them buy it. But really, that's the end of my session. So, obviously, open up for a few questions. Last slide there of the question I had the other day of my son deciding to empty out a whole loaf of bread on my kitchen floor. But yeah, if you have any questions, that'd be great.
Can you go back to the slide before?
Sure. Yes.
How does NetFlow, what other software do you use for applications? What tools do you use for your network forensics?
So yeah, we don't do anything with NetFlow. So NetFlow is something you can enable on sort of your existing perimeter devices. Usually, you can enable it, say, on your Cisco devices, and it's not just Cisco that do it. There's lots of variants of NetFlow. So I think